Good morning, everyone. I'm about to go into the synagogue to pray the morning prayers. And why is it that we have synagogues around the world today? What is the origin of the synagogue? And so we find in this week's Torah portion, the Jewish people finally conclude building the Mishkan, the tabernacle. And the reason they were given the commandment to build a Mishkan was because they had used their gold and silver to make a golden calf. And then God forgave the Jews for making the golden calf. But God said, now you will build for me a tabernacle out of gold, silver, copper, beautiful materials, and then I will dwell in your midst. And the Mishkan was the prototype, the forerunner of all future houses of worship. The reason we had the temples in Jerusalem and then all the synagogues around the world till today originates from the Mishkan. But the tabernacle, the Mishkan, really is an atonement for the golden calf. That's why in the first verse of this week's Torah portion, it's called Mishkan Heidot, which means the tabernacle of testimony. And the Rabbi said, what did it testify to? And the Rabbi said it testified to the fact that God forgave the Jewish people for the sin of the golden calf. And so the synagogue, one of the most beautiful Jewish institutions that we all enjoy until this day, every time we go to the synagogue, it originated from a terrible sin. But the Jewish people managed to turn that sin into something positive, which is the tabernacle and our synagogues until this very day. And that's why when the tabernacle is completed in this week's Torah portion, Moses blesses the Jewish people. And Moshe says, Yehi Ratzon, may it be the will of Almighty God, that Shetishresh China, that the divine presence shall rest in the work of your hands. Before this, you made a golden calf, and God did not dwell in the work of your hands. I bless you that God should always dwell in your actions and the work of your hands. They should be righteous deeds, that God should want to dwell in them. And then Moses states the famous verse, V'hi Noam, may the sweetness, may the favor of Almighty God be upon you. Umase Yadeinu Konene, which means may He establish the work of your hands. You see, we all work with our hands, but some of our works are not established, while others become permanent and established forever. And therefore the prayer and the blessing is that unlike the golden calf, where God did not dwell, and it was not established, rather the golden calf was destroyed, burnt in fire, and then grounded into dust. This tabernacle, God should dwell in it and establish it. And here we are over 3,000 years later, and the tabernacle endures. It is established as a permanent, everlasting testament to the bond and the relationship between God and the Jewish people. Someone once said, write your grievances in sand and your gratitude in stone. Certain things are meant to be forgotten, to be left behind, to be erased. Certain things have to be undone because they're negative. God does not reside and dwell in them. While other deeds, like our gratitude, have to be permanent, enduring, and everlasting. This is the remarkable story of the sin of the golden calf, which the Jewish people, through forgiveness and atonement, were able to bring about the enduring gift of our synagogues. And that's the message in all of our lives. Sometimes we fail, we make mistakes, we do things that we're not proud of. But the message of the golden calf is, how can I transform that and utilize this as a catalyst for something positive that will be enduring and everlasting? Last night I went to the gala for the Friends of IDF at the Norton Museum. And it was a beautiful display of our community. Hundreds and hundreds of people showed up to support our brave and courageous soldiers. It was a very moving evening. But at the end of the evening, I ran into this young woman from our community, and I see that she's pregnant. She already has 2 children, thank God. I see she's pregnant, and she tells me, yes, she's expecting, and I wish her b'shat tova. It should be in a good and auspicious hour. And she tells me the following story. She said, her husband and I, who I know well, we have 2 beautiful children, and we were debating whether or not we should have a 3rd child. The problem is we were having difficulty conceiving, and the only way to have a child would be through IVF. We went to the doctors, we found out what we need to do, the medication, the treatments, the injections, and we were on the fence. We were debating, should we go through all of the challenges and struggle and financial burden of having a 3rd child? October 7th occurred on Simchat Torah, and this tragedy befell the Jewish people. And she looked at her husband and she said, I decided I want to proceed with having a child. If our enemies want to destroy us, they want to eliminate Jewish life, we must bring Jewish life into this world. If they will come against us with hate, we must come together with love. And so Monday morning, October 9th, they decided they're going to go forward. They went to see their doctors and began the treatment of IVF. And here, thank God, she is in March, expecting. And this child will be the establishment of her hands, that God dwells in her womb and in her child forever. And whenever she looks at her child, she will say, I turn the tragedy of October 7th, the hate of our enemies, into the strength of our people. Every one of us in our own ways have to say, how will I establish God's presence here on earth? As a result of the tragedy of October 7th, what will I do that will be permanent and enduring? That like this woman and her husband can look at their child and all the nachas and all the joy that will come for generations and say, I took something dark and I turned it into light and goodness and kindness. And that's the blessing of the synagogue until this day. Sometimes it takes our downfalls, our challenges, our struggles, our hardships to bring about and expose the greatest light in our lives. Have a wonderful day.